Hello, and welcome to the Cycle Starters podcast, where we dive deep into the journeys of individuals who are breaking generational patterns and starting new cycles in their lineages. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with a truly remarkable guest. Joining us is Glecie Caballero, also known as the Bastos Bruha, or Nasty Witch, a powerful reclamation of her indigenous Philippine ancestry. Glecie is a sensuality priestess who helps women and femmes connect to their sensual expression through ceremony, movement, and communion with plant allies. In today's episode, we'll explore Glecie's ancestral healing journey that began in 2020, her path to becoming a sensuality priestess, and how she's leading a sensual revolution that centers the goddess, the priestess, and the matriarchy. Through her work with Sensual Simbahan, she's creating spaces where connection to one's sensuality is sacred, not shameful. We'll also discuss the cycle she's breaking in her lineage, the challenges she's faced, and how her work is helping others reconnect with their own sacred sensuality. So before we get into today's conversation, I have a big favor to ask. If you are loving the content that we are creating here on the Cycle Starters podcast, please like, subscribe, and share our channel with anyone you think would benefit from receiving this information. It really helps the algorithm get our content in front of as many viewers as possible. So thank you in advance for your support. And without further ado, let's welcome Glecie to the Cycle Starters podcast. Hi, sis.
Hello. So excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm excited to have you, and I'm really just pumped to get into it. And thank you for saying yes to being here.
Sure.
Well, let's just jump into it. Tell all of us about your ancestry. So what's your ancestral background?
Yes. So my ancestors are from the Philippines, specifically Western Visayas region. My maternal ancestry, my mother is from the island of Panay. The bigger city known there is Iloilo, so we're Ilonggo. And then my father, my paternal side, is from the island of Negros, San Carlos City. So in terms of language, they speak Bisaya Cebuano. Yeah, that is where my ancestors are from.
All right. Well, you know that my mom is also from the Philippines and also from the Visayas. So she was born in Tacloban, which is on Leyte, but my ancestry is from Leyte, Samar, and Panay. And you have ancestors in common. So yes, the ancestors have brought us together. And my question is, when did the concept of ancestral healing even enter your consciousness? Like, when did you realize, oh, things can be passed down from generation to generation? And then also, when did you realize you had the power to change those patterns and start new cycles?
I would say it was 2020, much like many other people. It was obviously an interesting year. It was the year of the pandemic. But for me, it was also the year my Saturn returned, around the time when we turned 30 and like question everything in our life. They told us to stay inside, and I literally went inside of myself and started doing the inner work and like healing work. A little bit before that, I was like starting to dabble in meditation and like crystals and spirituality in that way. And I was really wanting to dive deeper. Initially, I was only met with like non-colored either therapists or healers, and I felt in my soul that I really needed either someone of color or a Pinay to work with. And so, of course, the universe gave me exactly that. And I came across Atelin Herbalaria, and she shared that she was doing an ancestral journey. And I was like, this is what I've been wanting. This is what, I've been looking for and what I've been needing. And so I did that. That was July 2020. And yeah, from there, that was where like I understood the concept of like decolonization or re-indigenization, really, and seeing how what I was experiencing in my current lifetime isn't necessarily like just my struggle alone. It's ancestral, right? Like it's been passed on from generations due to colonization and the erasure of our ancestral beliefs and practices. And so, yeah, that's where it started. And then in working with her at the Lynn, is how I discovered more of like my, I guess, healing gifts. So I'm a nurse by profession, and I later discovered Reiki, energy healing. And so it's just interesting to see healing in that aspect, right? Because as a nurse, and especially in my setting as a perioperative nurse who works at a surgery center, we're mostly treating patients by symptom versus the holistic aspect of energy work. We're diving deeper to the whole being of the person rather than just treating the symptom, because most often the physical symptoms that people are experiencing are an accumulation of emotional, spiritual, and mental blockages, which again stem from like colonization, right? So that was a very interesting journey. And so, yeah, I'd say that's how this ancestral journey started.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Well, so I've got to ask, what was the inspiration for the Bastos Bruja, the nasty witch? Tell us. I want to hear the story, right? How did you go from doing Reiki to doing this, sacred sexuality, sensuality work?
So, yes, Reiki was very instrumental in coming back to my body and helping healing myself. It was a gentle way of learning about my body and how I could heal myself. And I was able to share that with others and share my story as well. And I did that as a business. This was probably like 2021. And you know how we think that we're doing all the healing work that we could do, and then it sucks the shit out of you and is like, nope, there's still more. Well, I remember feeling like the blockage in my business or success in my business. And back during this time in 2021, I was known as In Her Healings. That was my brand back then before the Bastos Bruha. But yeah, anyways, I felt like the blockage in my success in the business there was because they hadn't told my parents about it, that I was doing that other than nursing. And Spirit was like, nope, that's not what you're afraid to tell them. They were like, go back further. And that like broke my heart, because basically it meant like having to share my experience of childhood sexual abuse with them, because I basically held on to that secret for 20 years and
Mm.
hadn't shared that with them. And eventually I got to the point where I did. And it's just crazy how, as soon as I was able to voice that and share that, so there's a connection between our throat and our womb, energetically and anatomically. If you're look at an anatomical image of our throat and our cervix and womb, they look very similar. So as soon as I voiced that, I thought it was very interesting that my capacity for pleasure increased. That's when like I started exploring my own sexuality. It was my first time like ever playing with a toy, like a pleasure toy, and like having a real orgasm. And I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what pleasure actually feels like in my body. Allowing myself to experience that, because for so long, like, there was shame around it, right? Even me just playing with a toy felt shameful. So yeah, that was the start of it. That's where I transitioned from a Reiki energy healer to a pleasure reclamation coach. And as I was exploring more of my sexuality, I was in a long term relationship at that time, and things didn't end up aligning, and we separated. And that in itself was a whole initiation, because up until that point, I had been in long term relationships for pretty much half my life. So for me to be single and separate from a relationship that everyone thought I was going to be in for the rest of my life, pretty much, get married and have kids with, yeah, it was pretty big. Especially at my age, being mid 30s, it was very interesting. And after that separation, I just got to explore more of myself. I was able to travel, again, explore more of my sexuality. But during that time of the breakup, I halted my business for 2 years. And it wasn't until November of last year, November 2024, and then my most recent trip to the Mother Island this February, that Spirit was calling me back. They were like, okay, you can't keep running from your medicine. It's time to come back. And yeah, that's how the Bastos Bruja came about. Really me reclaiming my sensuality and sexuality and owning that, right? Again, I own being Bastos because you can't shame me for what I know about myself, right? I also like to say Bastos is indigenous because what I practice is ultimately what my indigenous ancestors, how they lived, right? But it's because of colonization and the church that these things are viewed as Bastos. Yeah, that is how she got here.
Well, thank God she's here. Thank you so much for sharing that story. You know, this is a tender, sensitive subject for the collective because there's a collective wound around women's sexual energy, women's sexuality. And I would say that this is very much still an active wound in our lineage, my maternal lineage, your lineage in the Philippines, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
there's colonial mentality, which is a part of it, right? White is right. Anything indigenous is primitive or uncivilized, and everything American is better than anything Filipino. But, you know, having been colonized by the Spanish for 400 years, the Philippines is mostly a Catholic country. There's so much conditioning around our bodies and our sexuality being shameful, right? And pleasure is selfish, and being in the body is dangerous. And who do you think you are? And you need to cover up and blah, blah, blah. So I love that you're doing this work. And I know that you've had to do a lot of work on yourself to get to this point. So I just want to acknowledge you and just thank you for saying yes, because we need as many models as possible of folks like us, you know, brown girlies, Filipinx, just owning their shit and being proud of their bodies and embodying this notion that our creative energy and our sexual energy are one and the same. You cannot
Exactly.
separate them at all. And I love how
Exactly.
you brought up that the throat is connected to the cervix. And I love how you had a huge activation. It's like when you spoke your truth, when you finally told your story, it unlocked so much for you. So that is just beautiful. Thank you. Well, okay, I have to ask, how did your parents, number one, take your revelation, right? When you told them about the childhood sexual abuse, and then how did they react to you becoming the Bastos Bruja?
Yeah. When I told them, and leading up to it, there was always the fear of like, what they would or wouldn't say, or the reaction or non-reaction. Overall, I'm happy like with how it turned out. My dad was like really uncomfortable. Like there was a book on the table that he was like flipping through as I was like telling him and my mom this. And I was just like, you know what? That's him, right? I
Yeah.
know he hears me. But yeah, I think for me sharing it with them was mostly for me than it was for them. And so I threw myself a launch party for the Bastos Bruja because I'm single and childless right now in my mid 30s, which is a big deal. I feel like that alone is breaking
Mm-hmm.
generational patterns. But I remember feeling grief for not feeling like what I accomplished in life was important because everyone else around me was getting celebrated for engagements, weddings, baby showers, gender reveals, all the freaking parties.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, like, I didn't feel like I was important or like worthy of being celebrated. And so I was like, F that. Like, let me throw myself a party, like my version of a bachelorette or a baby shower. But it's like, a business launch party or my debut, for example. And I debated whether I wanted to like invite my parents, but I was just like, let me not repeat this pattern of like hiding things from them,
Yeah.
actually invite them. And and it makes the most obvious sense to invite them to this party because there's going to be proof that people celebrate and support me for this work too. And so yeah, I invited them, and I don't know if they really know or understand what I do, which again is fine. The fact that they showed up and helped with setup and cleaning up at the party is all that I really can ask.
That's beautiful. And again, I can tell you've done a lot of work around this because their understanding what you're doing is irrelevant, right? If you had not done your work, you would still be like, you don't see me, you don't understand me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
I feel like you hit a point where it's like, I'm doing what I'm doing and they can accept it or not, and
Yeah.
it's okay. It's okay if
Yeah.
they don't understand, right? Because they grew up, during a certain era. And what you and I are doing right now is beyond their wildest imaginations, right? Like they could never
Absolutely.
conceive of anybody doing this type of work as a career. That just us through all the partitions in their minds about what is possible, what is respectable. So the
Exactly.
fact, like you said, that they showed up, that they helped set up, they helped clean up, they're there, they're in it as much as they can be,
Right.
you know, having come from where they do come from. So that is a beautiful thing. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you mentioned, not being married and not having a kid in your mid 30s as one of the patterns that you're breaking. And by the way, I didn't get married until I was 46, so I am right there with you and I have a bonus son. Yeah, but I don't have any of my own biological children, but I've got all of my creative projects. Like those are my babies.
Yeah. I
And I
feel that.
had to do all of my ancestral healing work. I had so much stuff to shed before I could meet my person, my divine companion, because if I had gotten married like in my 20s or even in my 30s,
Yeah.
girl, I'd be divorced by now. I'd be divorced
Exactly.
2, 3 times. So this all needs to happen, right? If that is something
Yeah.
that you want, and it's okay if you don't, but if you do want that, all of this had to happen first because
Yeah.
you want that person to like, totally see you and appreciate
Absolutely.
you for all that you are, you know?
Yeah. I've said the same because, yeah, me and my previous partner, we were together for almost 10 years and we were pretty much almost married. And I was like, yeah, I basically avoided my first divorce or
Seriously,
hopefully my only divorce. But yes, I am calling in
my
my divine
first
partner.
my first divorce. Hilarious.
But yes, I am calling in my divine partner. And they have to honor and accept the Bastos Bruha. And I feel like the Bastos Bruha is an embodiment for me, right? And if they can't accept that, then they're simply not the one. So,
Yeah. Amen. Yeah, I love it. Good things are coming for you, girl. I feel it already. I love it. You're such a goddess. Okay, so all right. So I was saying that, not having kids, not being married in your mid 30s, that is a pattern that you're definitely breaking. High five. Love it. What are the other patterns that you feel like you're breaking if you could put a fine point on it for people?
yeah, breaking
Mhm.
the silence of abuse and like actively speaking on it so that these cycles continue to break or like people don't allow them to happen. A little bit also on the being single and childless. Like I have ultimately a career and a business that supports me financially. I don't have
Mhm.
to have the security of the man
Right.
financially. I've also traveled the world solo
Mhm.
internationally. I feel like that is definitely a dream or a vision that someone in my lineage has prayed for. I feel like what I'm doing with the Bastos Bruja and my offering of Sensual Simbahan and creating a church ultimately.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. For sure. You are breaking serious patterns with that. I love it. All right, cool. Well, you know this, but some of our viewers may not know that I'm an Astro Ancestral Healing Guide and I have a monthly membership called the Astro Ancestral Healing Collective. And it's a sacred space that I've created for female bodied cycle breakers and cycle starters to alchemize deep ancestral wounds into embodied joy, creative potential, shifts to higher consciousness, and even spiritual gifts with astrology and pleasure as transformative medicine. And so, having said that, we have got to talk some astrology here. So, will you please, if you feel comfortable,
Yeah.
share your sun, moon, and rising signs with us?
So the last quarter of the year is where my big three are. Because I'm a Sag Sun, so that's December.
Mm hmm.
Libra Moon, that's
Mhm.
October, and then Scorpio Rising, so November.
Of course, Scorpio rising. You're sexy, sexy mama. All right. Okay. So that's air, water, and fire in your big three. So that's nice and balanced. So that's cool. All right. So let's start with the sun. Sagittarius represents the modality and element of mutable fire. And mutable just means it's changeable, it's adaptable, it's flexible. All of the seasons end with a sign in a mutable element because it transitions us from one season to the next. And fire is our passion, our intuition, inspiration, that creative spark. And this is where you shine. The archetype that I associate with this spectrum of psycho-spiritual energy, because it has a high expression and a low expression, the archetype that I associate with it is like the the explorer, but also the spiritual teacher. All the folks that I know with a strong Sagittarius presence in their charts, even if you're not a Sagittarius sun or Sag rising, you are curious and you just want to learn about people who are different from you specifically. Yeah, this is somebody who just wants to go on adventures and, maybe gets bored a little easily. You just like, you want movement.
Absolutely. That
Yeah,
track.
you want action, but definitely you are embodying this spiritual teacher right now. And I love that. Okay, so the Libra moon is interesting. So the moon represents our emotions, our emotional core, and our emotional inheritance. So that includes ancestral wounds, but also the gifts that our ancestors have given us. So Libra is a totally different energy from Sagittarius. It's cardinal air, and air is our thoughts, our consciousness, our beliefs, our communication. And cardinal means it's the initial thrust of that element. So in the northern hemisphere, Libra is the sign that ushers in the autumn season. And it's like a breath of fresh air. So Libra is interesting. So it's ruled by Venus, the goddess of love and money. So, what this says to me is that the gifts that your ancestors have given you is this ability to create beauty and harmony and balance and to see both sides of a story. Okay.
Yeah.
And justice is really important to you. And the wound here is people pleasing because,
No, it's definitely
right?
annoying.
Yeah,
It's
it's
because
like
I see
you,
all sides or both sides and all sides, and it's just like, what do I do? And it's like I want to please everyone, and it's like, yeah, it's annoying.
yeah, it's hard because, yeah, you see everybody else's side and you want everybody to be happy because you value harmony, you value peace, right? And so, what you can do is suppress your own needs and desires because you don't want to rock the boat. Right. And so I think the Libra growth journey is finding a way to take care of other people while also taking care of yourself, making your needs and desires just as important as the collective harmony and whatnot. Yeah, Libra moon. So this is an air sign. So how do you take care of yourself emotionally? Because you have an air sign as your moon sign. And so, would you say that the way you process your emotions, you start in the mind?
I would say so. Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's why I often have to journal to get it out, or however I normally do it, whether that's through dancing, or being out in nature, crying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, you are watery. You are Scorpio rising. So
Scorpio.
the rising sign, I know for folks who don't know, your rising sign is the vehicle for your divine mission. It's your perception of reality. It's the lens that you see everything out of. And also the people that you're meant to serve. These are the qualities that they pick up on first. And because there's been such a focus on sun sign astrology and pop culture astrology,
Yeah.
the rising sign qualities can sometimes be in the shadow. Like we're not conscious of them. We're just focused on the sun, which is how we see ourselves. But this is what people pick up on when they first meet you. And so Scorpio is fixed water. Water is our emotions, our feelings, our sentiments. And when I tune into this energy of fixed water, it's deep, deep water. So it's deep emotional sensitivity. And when it's in its highest expression, it's balanced with logic too. It's not overly emotional. But I associate this energy with the archetype of the attentive detective. And Scorpios are known for doing their research, getting to the bottom of things. They want to know the truth. They are born with a PhD in psychology. They can like see through BS like better than anybody else. And I have so many Scorpio friends. I love them because you can talk about any topic and they will go there, because they don't care. They don't care how like ugly or offensive
Right.
or dark it is. Like,
Yeah,
we can talk about it, but then we come back.
exactly.
I mean, obviously, there are some Scorpios who are unhealed and live in the darkness, okay? But I don't have those friends. But I really appreciate that ability to go deep. And that's really the special sauce of Scorpio. And all of the water signs are extremely psychic and intuitive. So all of this makes sense. And also, Scorpios are into esoterica and they're very sexual, and like, hello, you're doing,
The
this
Bastos Bruha.
pleasure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. You are completely embodying it. But I'm curious about how you've evolved as a Scorpio because there is a negative expression to Scorpio. Like they can keep secrets.
Mhm.
They hate it when people keep secrets from them, but they also keep secrets, which is hilarious to me. And then also, they can get impatient with people that aren't willing to go as deep as them. And while they're like super loyal, Scorpios will hold a grudge. Once you cross the Scorpio, my friend who I think she's a Scorpio moon, she's like, I will paint over you. Like you're dead to me. Right. So what has your journey been with all the expressions of Scorpio? How has that shown up in your life?
I think it's interesting that you pointed out, yeah, pop culture gets so focused on the sun sign. And I think for a while, I didn't really understand what Scorpio, how that showed up for me. Uh, but definitely, I feel like, with the Bastos Bruha, I don't know. I feel like Scorpio is underworld energy to me. So I feel like that's where the Bastos Bruha comes out because, like, we talk about the uncomfortable things. Yeah, how else does it show up?
I mean, Scorpio's all about death and rebirth too, right? It's
Yeah.
deep
Oh, yeah.
transformation.
Yeah, no, that I feel like is the biggest for me. I feel like I'm constantly evolving. It's who I am 6 months ago versus who I am a year ago. I feel like a totally different person just because of like all the different deaths and rebirths that I've gone through in my life. And it's so interesting how that shows
It
up.
is. And you
Yeah.
are a Scorpio rising. You chose to incarnate at that specific time because the rising sign actually changes multiple times a day. So you were
Hmm.
like, I'm coming in as a Scorpio. I'm going to evolve. I'm going to rise. I'm going to die. I'm going to rise like the phoenix multiple times. And,
Yeah.
that's all before 12 noon on a normal day. So super cool. Well, I'm curious, what are you working on now that you're excited about that you can share with us?
Yes. So my latest offering is Sensual Simbahan. Sembahan means church in the Philippine language. And it's ultimately a reclamation of what church is and how we worship, right? Because due to colonization and Catholicism, like they enforce religion on us versus and erase our ancestral practices. And I like to say this isn't your Lola's church, but
Mm-hmm.
it's the kind that she prayed for, it's the kind of
Yeah.
church where we could dress, dance, or sing how we wanted without fear of being shamed for it. It's the kind of church where we could actually speak to our ancestors and spirit guides without it being demonized. One where we get to express ourselves sensually and exercise our life force, our eros, our erotic energy. And in doing so, not just healing ourselves, but also healing our matriarchal lineage and doing so in a way that also honors the land too, because so many of us are disconnected from our ancestral land. important to honor not just our ancestral lands, but also the lands that we're currently on. So it's ultimately an ode again to my indigenous Philippine indigenous practices of animism, seeing life in spirit, in everything, in within us, all around us, in the plants, in the trees, in animals. And so yeah, that is what I'm working on. And so if you're in the Bay Area, I am having one in August, Saturday, August 16th, in Daly City. So you can find that information on my Instagram.
Amazing. Yeah, my aunt and uncle used to live in Daly City. They moved back to the Philippines a few years ago, but
Good for them.
I love it. You're in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
Are you in Vallejo by any chance?
No, I'm in San Francisco.
Oh, you're in San Francisco. Okay, cool. Lots of Pinays up there. We're a strong contingency up in the Bay.
Yeah.
What indigenous territory is that again?
Loney,
Yeah.
Rainitic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Beautiful. Yes. You know, I'm on Tongva Chumash territory down in Venice Beach. All right. Well, cool. Thank you for sharing that. So, if anybody wants to follow Glecie, learn about how to work with her, these events, you can check her out on Instagram. So, I will put all of this info in the show notes. All right. This is awesome. So, final question, my dear. I ask this of all of my guests. What are the cycles that you're starting in your lineage?
Oh, what cycles am I starting in my lineage? I'm feeling called to share this. The pattern that I'm starting in my lineage is by coming into union with a man who's better than any man that my paternal bloodline has ever seen.
Oh, fire. Look at you. I
Yeah.
love that. Wow. Beautiful. Yes, this has been such an honor to connect with you and to be in dialogue with you on the show. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. This has been so fun, and I love the work you're doing. So I'm hoping that we can collaborate together in the future.
Absolutely.
And I think I mentioned this earlier. I'd love for you to do a workshop in the membership, you know, be a guest teacher at some point. So we will connect offline about that, but I would absolutely love it.
Yes. Of course, it would be an honor to do that.
Yay.
Thank you so much
Awesome.
for having me. This has been fun, and
Good.
also allowed me to further exercise my throat as it has been one of those growth edges for me still. So, yeah, thank you for allowing me to exercise it.
Girl, anytime. Anytime you want to come on, I will let you work that throat chakra. We can talk about all the juicy topics. All right. Well, this has been wonderful. Thanks everybody. That's it for this episode of the Cycle Starters podcast, and we will see you next time. All right. Bye everybody. Bye, Glessy.